Hi, I'm Wesley, but you can call me Wes. I'm a mechanical engineer with a passion for mountain biking, and I want to share my love of the sport with you. Welcome to Rice, Ride, and Reason. My goal isn't only to be a trail building channel. I want to tear down all of mountain biking with science and engineering. Honestly, I'm by no means a great rider, but I love bikes and I love the outdoors. So what I lack in skill will be substituting with a bit of math. So what's the worst that could happen? This is my backyard. I'm still working on a name, but switchback saddle is growing on me. My house is located close to the center of the property, and I have about 70 feet of elevation drop to either side. And from the highest point, I can get almost 100 feet. It's hard to really estimate it right now, but I think we'll be able to get 1 to 2 miles worth of trail. So hopefully that's 15 to 20 minutes of riding per loop. As you can see, I started building these trails last summer, and then I realized it would be a great idea to make a YouTube channel around them. So these first couple of episodes will be playing catch up with the progress to date. So let's get building. To start out, I wanted to get a better understanding of the geography of the property. I was able to dig up some free topographical maps of my land, and using SolidWorks, I was able to build this scale model at a 1/8 inch equaling 10 feet. But having something on a computer is definitely not as fun as a real life model you can hold. So I decided to mill out the map out of some wood. We'll be using this model to plan out all of our routes before moving dirt. I'll also be making smaller models of the features, so we can see the progress of the trail as time goes on. Here's the final map, and my house is located roughly here. I'll have a feeder starting at the back of my garage, since I plan on converting it into the Rice, Ride, and Reason workshop soon. We'll be making our way across the back to this open area here, and this will be the start of the first trailhead. Starting up top, I want to eventually end up in this flatter section down here. This area has some decent downhill potential, but the ride would be over in a few seconds, so I plan on doing some switchbacks. I want this trail to be very flowy and fun at the beginning before having to climb back out. The first turn will be the berm we're covering today. Now time for a disclaimer. I'm no expert at trail building, and I'm learning as I go. I started building this trail last fall, and I've learned a ton during that period. That being said, we'll be doing things slightly different in the future. In preparation to building these trails, I cut down a few trees around my yard. We had installed a fence for the 2 doggos, but these trees were already dead and honestly too close to the house for comfort. A bad storm, and these definitely would have hit the house, and I'd have to replace the fence, or even a few windows. Luckily, most of this wood is decently old growth, so there should be a fair amount of heartwood we can use for building on the trails without worrying too much about them rotting. For starters, I laid out the trail with surveyor flags and walked the sections a lot to make sure I liked the general flow and could avoid excess damage to the natural flora. Next, I started by raking away leaves and removing any briar bushes. With the clean working area, I found the spot to put the berm. So let's talk about the design of this berm. The lead up to the berm is 33 feet long and has a drop of 8 feet. For these calculations, I'm going to assume a few things. Basically, I'm going to ignore drag and friction, and say I can pedal fast enough to make those equal out in the end. To start, I want to find the speed I'll be entering the berm at. With a bit of physics and kinematics, we'll be able to calculate it at 15.3 miles an hour. Not too shabby, but maybe a bit fast. From here, I want to solve for centripetal acceleration. This will be the g-force we feel as we round the berm. We can then take that acceleration to figure out how far we should be leaning the bike, which will in turn be the angle we build the berm at. I think a good rough target will be about 35 degrees of lean and about a g of acceleration. So I've expanded this out to show different speeds and curvatures, which correspond to bike lean and g-force. I'm going to say anything over 4 g's sounds like certain death, and at the same time, anything under a half a g isn't truly sending it. So with all this fun math, we're going to aim for about 12 feet inner radius and a 15-foot outer radius, but we'll keep the angle on the lower end of roughly 35 degrees. This means the ride platform will be about 44 inches wide, which seems pretty safe to me. It'll allow for people to go faster or slower if they want, and still feel reasonably safe. If we ride faster, we can still lean the bike more into it, but anyone new to the trail might not want to commit to that steep angle. So let's get to the build. I started out by using a tape measure and marking paint to get the desired inner and outer radii. Then I dug a lot of post holes by hand. I found using an earth auger bit and a hand drill really loosened up the dirt first, making it much easier with post hole diggers. These are spaced out every 3 feet along the inner curve, which equals about 45 inches on the outer curve. Hopefully, the tight spacing and some deep holes keep this berm in place. I wanted to have each post sunk at least 3 feet into the ground. This is a bit deeper than normal, but I won't be using any concrete. With the added force of riding, plus the off-camber nature of the berm, a bit of extra foundation will go a long way. From here, I began making a frame from leftover cedar fence posts. After that, it was time to box in the frame. I put some string around each post to have a smooth transition as it wraps around the hill. The string was used to keep a constant height, and I could make the bottom brace level to it. I then used a T-bevel to set the 35-degree angle. The transition into the trail was a bit trickier. I opted to go for another post, tangential to the outer curve. This will be spaced out about another 2 feet farther into the trail on each side, and the slope will go from about 35 degrees to flush with the riding surface. After all that, it was time to install the nailers. I worked from the inner to outer radius and put a support beam right in the center between the 2 posts. At this point, I screwed everything I could together to make it as rigid as possible. Finally, with the framing done, I took a small saw to cut off all the excess post height and trim any extra length in the braces. For the decking, I'm going to be trying something a little different. I gathered a lot of heartwood from those trees I felled earlier. I used a shingle froe to split the logs into planks. The heartwood is very strong, and by splitting the logs, I keep good solid grain structure, which should increase the strength of the boards, but also allow for some flexibility. I'm not going to lie, this took about 20 to 30 hours to get enough of the riding surface, and my hands were numb for days afterwards. With these rough splits, it should give us a great riding surface that'll be tacky even when wet. At least, I hope it does. I carved a recess into the hillside, so once the berm was done, the planking would be relatively flush with the ground here. Finally, I went back over the bottom of the berm and evened out the dirt. This also makes an easier beeline if someone doesn't want to commit to riding on this sketchy wall. But with the berm done, let's go send it.
It